My name is Peter, and at 58 years old, I've built a successful small business in Ohio from nothing but hard work and determination. My only daughter, Amanda, now 26, was raised with every advantage my wife Carol and I could provide. But nothing prepared us for that moment at her wedding venue when she looked us in the eyes and said, "You're not actually invited." We'd paid for everything, every flower, every plate, every minute of that day. The shock froze my heart before anger and clarity took over. Let me tell you what happened next. Before I get into this heartbreaking story, where are you watching from today? If you've ever had to make tough choices with ungrateful family members, hit that subscribe button and join our community of people who understand that sometimes love means setting boundaries. I didn't start with much in life. My father worked at the local factory, and my mother cleaned houses to help make ends meet. They taught me the value of hard work and saving for what matters. After putting myself through community college, I started a commercial cleaning business that eventually grew into a respectable enterprise with 30 employees. I met Carol during a business class our sophomore year. She was studying accounting and helped me understand the financial side of running a company. We married right after graduation 32 years ago now. We wanted a big family, but life had other plans. After years of heartbreaking fertility treatments, our miracle baby, Amanda, finally arrived. The moment I held her in my arms, I made a silent promise that she would never know the struggles Carol and I faced growing up. Maybe that was our first mistake. From the beginning, Amanda was the center of our universe. When the local public school seemed inadequate, we stretched our budget for Westlake Academy's tuition. Dance lessons, piano classes, summer camps in New England, language immersion programs in Europe, we provided it all. I worked longer hours and took fewer vacations. Carol managed our household with careful budgeting to make it work. We wanted Amanda to have every door open to her future. Amanda was bright, straight-A student, talented pianist, and eventually co-captain of her high school debate team. But looking back, I can see how her sense of entitlement grew alongside her accomplishments. When she was 16, she threw a fit because the car we bought her was a practical sedan, rather than the luxury model her friend received. Carol always smoothed things over. She's just at that age, Peter. The college selection process was our first major financial hurdle. Amanda only applied to prestigious private universities, despite my suggestions to consider excellent state schools. When acceptance letters arrived, she chose Bedford University. Annual tuition alone was more than most families in our town, made in a year. We depleted a significant portion of our retirement savings for her education, but I convinced myself it was an investment in her future. The first real distance between us developed during her junior year abroad in France. Weeks would pass with barely a text message. When Carol expressed concern, Amanda replied that she was busy experiencing culture and couldn't be tethered to her phone for our comfort. I felt a pang of hurt, but told myself this independence was what we had raised her to have. Carol frequently defended Amanda's increasingly dismissive behavior. "She's finding herself Peter. Remember how we wanted to break away from our parents' expectations. Give her space to become her own person." I did give space. Perhaps too much. What I didn't realize was that the values we thought we had instilled, gratitude, respect, humility, were being replaced with new priorities, status appearance, and social climbing. The daughter who once helped me clean the office on weekends to understand the value of work was transforming into someone I barely recognized. Amanda met Jason during the fall semester of her senior year. He was studying finance, though from what I could gather his academic pursuits were secondary to his social life and managing the trust fund his grandparents had established. When she first mentioned him, her voice changed. There was a new excitement there, but also something else I couldn't quite identify at the time. Reverence, perhaps. Jason's family has a summer home in the Hamptons, she told us during a weekend visit, and a winter place in Aspen. They've invited me for Christmas break. Christmas had always been our special time as a family. Even during her rebellious teenage years, Amanda cherished our traditions. Now she was casually discarding them for a boy she'd known less than 3 months. Carol squeezed my hand under the table, silently asking me not to object. "We'd love to meet him before you go," I said instead. 2 weeks later, they came for dinner. Jason arrived driving a car that cost more than my first house. He was handsome and polished in that way that comes from generations of privilege, perfect haircut, perfect teeth, perfect posture. His handshake was firm but brief, his smile never quite reaching his eyes when speaking to me. During dinner, I tried making connections. "Amanda says you're in finance. I could have used your expertise when starting my business. I'm more focused on portfolio management and equity markets," he replied. "Small business financing isn't really my area." The slight emphasis on small wasn't lost on me. Throughout the meal, Jason spoke mostly about his family connections, their vacation properties, and the job waiting for him at his uncle's investment firm. Not once did he ask about our business or family. When I mentioned being a first-generation college graduate, Jason nodded with what felt like practiced politeness. "That's great. It's amazing what people can accomplish these days without connections." Carol kept the conversation flowing, but I noticed how Amanda watched Jason's reactions to everything we said, adjusting her own responses to mirror his subtle approval or disapproval. She had never been concerned with impressing anyone this way before. After they left, Carol and I had our first serious discussion about Jason. "He seems very assured of himself," Carol offered diplomatically. "He's condescending," I countered. "Did you notice how Amanda barely mentioned growing up here? She acted like she appeared fully formed at Bedford University. She's in love, Peter. We need to support her choices." 6 months later, Amanda called with news of their engagement. No prior hints, no discussions about their future plans. Just a phone call announcing they'd be married within the year. My stomach knotted with concern at the rushed timeline, but Carol's elation drowned out my reservations. The following weekend, we were invited to meet Jason's parents at Oakmont Country Club, a place where membership costs more than most people's annual salary. Harold and Vivian Bradford sat stiffly across from us, evaluating every word and gesture. Harold was a senior partner at a prestigious law firm. Vivian chaired several charity boards and made it clear that volunteer work was her choice, not a necessity. "Amanda tells us you run a cleaning company," Harold said, swirling his scotch. "Commercial property services," I corrected gently. "We handle maintenance for office buildings, medical facilities, and retail spaces throughout 3 counties. How enterprising," Vivian replied. "Self-made success stories are so inspiring." Her tone suggested I had overcome some terrible disadvantage like being raised by wolves. Throughout dinner, they made numerous comments about how Amanda would be moving up in the world and how they would help smooth out her transition into their social circle. In the car ride home, I couldn't contain my frustration. "Did you hear how they talked about us, like we're some quaint cultural experience for Amanda to have overcome?" Carol sighed. "They were a bit condescending, but this isn't about us or them. It's about Amanda's happiness. If she loves Jason, we need to make this work." 2 days later, Amanda called with her expectations for the wedding. Not requests, expectations. She wanted a destination ceremony at Belle Claire Resort, where Jason's cousin had married a minor European royal. She needed at least 200 guests accommodated. She had already spoken with an exclusive wedding planner. "Honey," I said carefully, "that sounds very expensive. Maybe we should discuss a budget first. Dad, this is my only wedding. Don't you want it to be special?" Her voice took on that edge I'd begun to recognize, disappointment mixed with accusation. Of course, but Jason's parents expect a certain standard. I don't want to embarrass them, or you. That manipulation worked. To prove we weren't the embarrassment she feared, I agreed to a meeting with her wedding planner. What I thought would be a budget discussion turned into a presentation of a $75,000 modest wedding package. To afford this, I took out a line of credit against my business. I didn't tell Amanda this. I didn't want her to feel burdened. That was my second mistake. By absorbing the financial strain invisibly, I reinforced her disconnection from consequences. The months of wedding planning became a series of escalating demands and diminishing consideration. Amanda hired Elise Thornton, a wedding planner, whose client list included celebrities and socialites. From our first meeting, Elise treated Carol and me like obstacles rather than the parents of the bride, or more importantly, the people funding the entire celebration. "We'll need the first installment of $30,000 this week," Elise informed me, sliding a contract across the table. "Venue deposits and vendor retainers must be secured immediately." I stared at the figure. $30,000 just for deposits. Amanda sighed loudly. "Dad, please don't make this difficult. This is standard for weddings of this caliber." I signed the check, telling myself this was what fathers did for their daughters. But each subsequent meeting followed the same pattern presentation of extravagant options. My suggestion of reasonable alternatives, Amanda's embarrassment at my penny pinching, and my eventual capitulation. The guest list became another source of tension. My initial list included 40 names, close family. My business mentor, Frank, who had guided me for 20 years, employees who had been with me since the beginning, and neighbors who had watched Amanda grow up. When the final list emerged, only 10 of my suggested guests remained. Frank had been cut entirely. "We had to prioritize Jason's family connections," Amanda explained without making eye contact. "His father has important colleagues who must be invited. You understand how networking works, Dad." My brother Thomas and his family were excluded because Amanda felt their farm background might make conversation awkward. These were people who had celebrated every birthday with Amanda, who had brought meals when Carol was ill years ago. I pushed back on this particular cut. "Thomas is my only brother. His children are your cousins." "The guest list is already at capacity," Elise interjected smoothly. "Perhaps they can attend the casual brunch the day after." Carol's attempts to participate in planning were similarly rebuffed. When she showed Amanda the elegant blue dress she had purchased for the wedding, Amanda visibly cringed. "Mom, that's way too casual. The mothers are wearing designer gowns." She sent Carol to a boutique where the least expensive option was $4,000 more than Carol had ever spent on herself. That night I held Carol as she cried quietly in our bedroom. "She's ashamed of us, Peter, of the life we've built." "No," I insisted, though doubt had firmly taken root. "She's just caught up in wedding excitement." The physical toll of these months was substantial. My doctor noted my blood pressure had risen significantly. I developed insomnia lying awake, calculating how long it would take to recover financially from this wedding. I increased my workload, taking on additional clients and working weekends to ensure the business remained stable while funding Amanda's demands. 3 months before the wedding, I attempted one last reasonable conversation. The floral budget alone had doubled from the initial estimate. "Amanda, I'm concerned about these mounting costs. We need to establish some boundaries." Her response was immediate and harsh. "Are you seriously trying to ruin my special day over money? After all these years talking about how successful your business is? Or was that just talk?" Her accusation stung. I had built my business through honest work and never exaggerated our success. But the implication that I might be less than I claimed pushed me to prove otherwise. "No, sweetheart, I just want to make sure we're being practical." There's nothing practical about a dream wedding, Dad. That's the whole point. I authorized the additional expenses, ignoring the growing unease in my stomach. What I didn't know then was that every capitulation was reinforcing a pattern that would culminate in the most painful moment of my life. Belclair Resort sprawled across 30 acres of manicured landscape overlooking the Atlantic. As Carol and I drove through the ornate gates for the wedding weekend, I felt a mixture of pride that I could provide this for my daughter and apprehension about the next 3 days. We checked into our room, which at Amanda's insistence was in a different building from the main wedding party. It's the only way to manage the room blocks efficiently, she had explained. I didn't argue, though it felt symbolic of our increasing separation. That evening I reviewed my credit card statement and found an additional $8,000 in charges I hadn't authorized, last-minute upgrades to the cocktail hour premium liquor packages and an expanded raw bar. When I texted Amanda about these charges, her response was brief. Essential adjustments to meet expectations. Talk tomorrow. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private dining room overlooking the ocean. When Carol and I arrived, we discovered the seating arrangement placed us at a small table near the service entrance, far from Amanda and Jason, who sat with his parents and the wedding party at the center table. "There must be a mistake," Carol whispered, her face flushing with embarrassment. I approached the wedding planner. "Excuse me, Elise, it seems our table assignment is incorrect." She glanced at her tablet. "No, that's correct. Amanda approved all seating yesterday." Throughout dinner, we watched as Jason's parents circulated among guests, introducing themselves and connecting people with practiced charm. I overheard Vivian commenting to another guest about the modest rehearsal dinner, suggesting they had hosted more impressive events for casual gatherings. When the time came for speeches, I had prepared a heartfelt toast about watching Amanda grow from a curious little girl into a capable woman. I approached the small stage area, champagne in hand, but before I could reach the microphone, Jason's best man, Thomas, stepped up instead. "Sorry, just following the program," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I returned to my seat as Thomas launched into anecdotes about Jason's accomplishments and their friendship since prep school. His speech included a joke about Jason marrying up from his usual standards but down in tax brackets, which drew laughs from many guests but felt like a deliberate slight. The sting of this public exclusion was too much. I excused myself and stepped onto the terrace, breathing deeply to calm my racing heart. Carol joined me moments later, her eyes reflecting my pain. "What's happening, Peter?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Did we fail as parents? Somehow?" I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "I don't think this is about our parenting. This is about social status and Amanda choosing a different world than the one we built for her." "Should we say something to her tonight?" I nodded. "We should try." But when we returned to the dining room, speeches had concluded, and Amanda was surrounded by bridesmaids taking photos. She left the dinner without saying goodnight, heading off with friends for one last unmarried girls' night, according to the wedding planner. In our hotel room that night, neither of us could sleep. Carol curled against me, occasionally wiping tears. "Maybe tomorrow will be better," she whispered. "Maybe she's just overwhelmed." "I'll talk to her in the morning," I promised. "We'll clear the air before the ceremony." But my early morning text requesting a brief meeting went unanswered. Through our window, we watched Amanda taking photos with Jason's family by the rose garden, laughing and embracing Vivian with the easy affection she once showed Carol. Each time Carol waved from our balcony, Amanda seemed conveniently distracted. The distance was no longer just emotional, it had become intentional avoidance, and I still didn't understand why. On the morning of Amanda's wedding day, I carefully selected my best suit, the one I had purchased specifically for this occasion. Carol looked beautiful in her expensive gown, though worry lines creased her forehead despite her careful makeup. As I adjusted my tie, I felt the weight of the envelope in my jacket pocket, containing our wedding gift, a significant check representing our final contribution, and a letter expressing our love and hopes for her marriage. "She'll remember who she is today," Carol said, smoothing my lapel. "Once the ceremony starts, she'll look for us in the audience." We arrived at the venue garden 90 minutes early, hoping to help with final preparations, or simply to see Amanda before she became someone's wife. The coordinator at the entrance checked her tablet. "Peter and Carol Anderson. You're not on my list for early arrival." I explained we were the bride's parents. "Oh," she replied, looking confused. "Let me check with Elise." While waiting, we observed Harold and Vivian being escorted through the garden by staff stopping to make adjustments to flower arrangements and directing wait staff. They were treated like the hosts of the event, despite not contributing financially. When finally permitted to enter, we were directed to wait in the designated family area, rather than being shown to the bridal preparation suite. As we walked through the venue, several of Jason's relatives nodded politely, but none approached us for conversation. After 30 minutes of increasing anxiety, I decided to find Amanda myself. Carol and I walked to the bridal suite, where a security person checked our names against another list. Again, confusion crossed his face. "You can wait here. I'll check if the bride is receiving visitors." Visitors. As if we were distant acquaintances, rather than the people who had given her life and funded this entire celebration. The door finally opened, and there stood Amanda in her wedding dress, a custom designer gown that had cost as much as a car. For a brief moment, my heart swelled with fatherly pride. My little girl looked like a princess. Then I registered her expression. Not joy at seeing us, not even neutral acknowledgement. Her face showed annoyance, as if we were uninvited salespeople interrupting her day. "Amanda, you look beautiful," Carol began, her voice trembling slightly. Amanda glanced behind her, where bridesmaids were pretending not to listen. She stepped into the hallway, partially closing the door. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something, and I thought you'd understand without me having to spell it out." Her voice was cool, detached. "You're not actually invited to be part of the ceremony or reception. You can watch from the back, but Jason's stepdad is walking me down the aisle." The words hit me like physical blows. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. "But we're your parents," Carol gasped. "We paid for everything." "And I appreciate that financial contribution," Amanda replied, emphasizing the word financial, as if our role had been merely transactional. "But this wedding is about merging into Jason's family and their social circle. Having you prominently involved would just make everyone uncomfortable." I found my voice, though it sounded strange to my ears. "Uncomfortable? We're your family, Amanda. Look, Dad, you and Mom don't fit in with these people. You'd be miserable trying to make conversation, and frankly, they'd be judging you the whole time." Her tone softened slightly, as if she were doing us a favor. "I'm protecting you from that." The door behind her opened wider, and Jason appeared, placing his arm possessively around Amanda's waist. His expression held no shame, only impatience. "Is there a problem?" he asked, looking between us. "No problem," Amanda assured him. "I was just explaining the arrangement we discussed." "Arrangement," I echoed. "How long has this been planned?" Jason checked his watch. "A few weeks. We thought it would be easier this way. More comfortable for everyone." Amanda nodded. "You've already paid for everything anyway. The vendors are taken care of." Those words crystallized everything. We had been reduced to financial backers, nothing more. All those years of love, sacrifice, and support condensed to a series of payments. Carol began to cry softly beside me. A few wedding guests walking past glanced our way, curiosity and discomfort on their faces. Our family drama was becoming a spectacle. "Mr. and Mrs. Anderson," A security staff member approached us. "I can show you to the designated seating area now." Amanda turned back toward her bridesmaids. "I need to finish getting ready." As she disappeared into the bridal suite, Jason lingered a moment longer. "We appreciate your understanding," he said, with the practiced politeness of someone dismissing household staff. Carol leaned against me, her body trembling with silent sobs as the security person waited to escort us away from our own daughter's celebration. I guided Carol through the venue and out to the parking lot, her fingers digging into my arm as she struggled to maintain composure. Once inside our car, her control broke entirely. Tears streamed down her face, smearing the careful makeup she had applied hours earlier with such hope. "How could she do this to us?" she kept asking. "What did we do wrong?" I sat silently gripping the steering wheel, a storm of emotions making it impossible to start the car. Anger, humiliation, and heartbreak competed for dominance. Through the windshield, I watched guests in expensive attire, arriving valets taking their luxury vehicles. This celebration we had financed was proceeding without us, the ultimate rejection from our only child. Something shifted inside me in that moment. A lifetime of accommodating Amanda's increasingly entitled behavior, of making excuses for her dismissive attitude, of sacrificing our financial security to fund her desires. It all crystallized into perfect clarity. "Carol," I said quietly, "do you think we deserve to be treated this way?" She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "No, but she's our daughter. What can we do? We can respect ourselves enough to refuse this treatment," I replied, an unexpected calm settling over me. "We've given everything and she's thrown it back in our faces. There has to be a consequence." I reached for my phone and called David Klein, my attorney, with whom I had discussed a contingency plan weeks earlier, when red flags about the wedding had first appeared. I hadn't wanted to believe I would need it, but David had insisted on preparing documentation just in case. "David, it's Peter Anderson. Activate Protocol A for the wedding contracts." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached and businesslike. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Once initiated, this will be difficult to reverse." "I'm certain. They've made their position clear. Execute everything we discussed." Next, I called my credit card company. Having anticipated potential issues, I had alerted them previously about the large wedding charges and the possibility of disputes. "This is Peter Anderson. I need to initiate disputes on all vendor charges for the Bradford Anderson wedding at Belle Claire Resort Authorization Code 4796. I listened to their confirmation. "Yes, all charges within the past 30 days. Fraudulent authorization." While not technically fraud in the criminal sense, I had legally protected myself by requiring my signature on all vendor contracts. The final payments scheduled for today, which constituted nearly 40% of the total costs, would not be processed. Carol watched me with wide eyes as I sent a series of pre-drafted text messages to key vendors. "To the catering company, contract violation notification. Final payment withheld due to breach of terms. Service may be terminated immediately. To the photographer, contract services no longer authorized by financial guarantor. Cease all work immediately. To the venue manager, breach of contract notice, exclusion of contract signatory from event. All pending payments cancelled effective immediately." I had consulted with David about the specific wording that would trigger immediate service cessation without requiring lengthy explanations. As the legally responsible party on all contracts, I had more power than Amanda realized. I started the car. "We're leaving." "Where are we going?" Carol asked, still dazed by the sudden turn of events. "Anywhere but here." We drove in silence for 20 minutes, before stopping at a scenic overlook. The irony wasn't lost on me. This beautiful view was the kind of place featured in wedding photos. Photos that would not be taken today, at least not by the professional photographer who was likely packing up equipment at this very moment. My phone began buzzing incessantly with calls from the wedding planner. I silenced it. "Did you just cancel our daughter's wedding?" Carol asked quietly. "No, I cancelled our financial support of people who don't consider us family." I took her hand. "I've been preparing for this possibility. When Amanda started excluding us from decisions while expecting us to pay for everything, I asked David to review all contracts and add protective clauses. What will happen now? The venue and vendors will demand payment to continue services. Jason's family will either pay, or the wedding will be significantly downscaled or postponed." A text from Amanda appeared on my screen. "Where are you? What's happening? Vendors are leaving." I showed Carol, who winced but nodded slowly. She didn't want us there anyway. We turned off our phones and focused on each other. For the first time in months, we talked about our feelings without strategizing how to manage Amanda's expectations. The betrayal cut deeply, but beneath the pain, I felt something unexpected relief. The constant strain of trying to earn our daughter's approval had been exhausting us both. Instead of returning to the resort, we found a charming country inn 30 miles away. The innkeeper noticed our formal attire and distressed expressions, but asked no questions, simply offering a room with a garden view and information about the small restaurant next door. Over a quiet dinner, Carol reached across the table and took my hand. "I keep thinking we should go back and fix this for her." "That's what we've always done," I replied. "Fixed everything, removed all obstacles, sheltered her from consequences. And look where it led us. Do you think she'll ever forgive us?" I considered the question carefully. The real question is whether she'll ever recognize what needs forgiving, her treatment of us, not our response to it. For the first time that day, Carol smiled faintly. "Remember when she was 7 and refused to thank your mother for that handmade quilt? You made her write a proper thank you note before she could go swimming. She was so angry," I recalled. "But she did it, and later she actually appreciated the quilt. Maybe she still needs those lessons, even as an adult." We ordered dessert and made a decision to take the vacation we had postponed to pay for the wedding, using the funds that would have covered the final payments. It wasn't spite, it was self-care after months of emotional and financial strain. As we walked back to the inn under starlight, I realized that being disinvited from the wedding also meant being disinvited from Amanda's life as she had chosen to live it. The thought brought sadness, but also resolution. We would always be her parents, but the relationship would need to be rebuilt on mutual respect, not just obligation and financial support. We returned home 3 days later to dozens of voicemails and angry texts. From piecing together the messages, we learned what had happened after our departure. The wedding had unraveled quickly. The catering staff had packed up their equipment mid-setup. The florist had removed arrangements already placed at the ceremony site. The photographer had departed with all equipment. The venue manager had informed the wedding party that the reception space would not be available without immediate alternate payment arrangements. Jason's parents had attempted to salvage the situation by providing their credit cards, but coordinating new contracts on the spot had proved impossible. The ceremony had proceeded in a hastily rearranged format with iPhone photography and a dramatically reduced reception featuring whatever food the resort could prepare on short notice. Most guests had departed early, sensing the tension and disorganization. The most telling message came from Jason's mother. "Your vindictive stunt humiliated our entire family. Expect to hear from our attorneys." I forwarded that message directly to David, who assured me our actions were legally protected by the contracts I had signed. 5 days after returning home, we heard tires screeching in our driveway. Amanda and Jason stormed to our front door, still visibly furious. Carol tensed beside me as I opened the door. Amanda burst past me into the living room. "How could you do this to me? You ruined the most important day of my life." She looked different, harder somehow. her face set in lines of anger that reminded me of Vivian's perpetual disapproval. Jason stood slightly behind her, his expression cold. "We didn't do anything to you, Amanda," I replied calmly. "We removed ourselves and our financial support from a situation where we were explicitly unwanted." "You knew we needed that money to pay the vendors," she shouted. "You promised." "I promised to pay for a wedding where we were welcomed as your parents," I corrected. "Not to bankroll an event where we were treated as embarrassing obligations to be hidden away." Jason stepped forward. "My parents had to write checks totaling $40,000 on the spot. We had to cancel our honeymoon to cover expenses. We'll be suing for breach of contract and emotional damages." I maintained my composure. "I've already spoken with my attorney. All contracts included clauses requiring my presence as the financially responsible party. Your decision to exclude us triggered the nullification provisions. You're welcome to pursue legal action, but David is confident in our position." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "This isn't about legal clauses. This is about you deliberately ruining my wedding because your feelings were hurt." "No, Amanda. This is about consequences," Carol said, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. "You can't expect people to fund celebrations of their own rejection." "I didn't reject you," Amanda protested. "I just wanted a certain aesthetic for my wedding. An aesthetic that didn't include your parents," I noted. "That's the definition of rejection." The conversation continued in circles with Amanda, alternating between accusations, attempts to make us feel guilty, and demands for financial compensation. Jason made thinly veiled threats about ruining my business reputation. Throughout it all, Carol and I remained calm, a united front, for the first time in too long. Finally, Amanda delivered her ultimatum. "Either you make this right financially, or you'll never see me again." I looked at my daughter, this person I had loved since before she took her first breath, and felt profound sadness rather than anger. "Amanda, we will always be your parents, and our door will always be open to you. But we will not be financially abused or emotionally manipulated anymore. If you decide that money is more important than a relationship with us, that's your choice to make." They left with Amanda's declaration that she was done with us forever. The slam of their car doors echoed like a period at the end of a chapter. The following weeks were difficult. Word spread through our extended family and social circle. Some people, particularly those who had witnessed Amanda's transformation over recent years, expressed understanding of our position. Others, who only heard Amanda's version, criticized our vindictiveness. Carol struggled with waves of grief and doubt. "Maybe we should just pay the money and try to repair the relationship," she suggested during a particularly low evening. "If we do that, we're teaching her that she can treat people horribly as long as she threatens enough consequences," I replied. "I don't want that lesson to follow her through life." We focused on healing our own relationship, which had been strained by months of navigating Amanda's wedding demands. We took that postponed vacation, spending 2 weeks in the mountains of Colorado, hiking and reconnecting. For the first time in years, we made decisions based solely on our own preferences rather than anticipating Amanda's judgment. 6 months passed without contact. Then, while checking email one evening, I found a message from Amanda sent from Thailand, where she and Jason were finally taking their delayed honeymoon. The message wasn't an apology, but it was the first crack in the wall between us. "The resort here reminds me of the place we stayed in Florida when I was 12. Remember how you taught me to snorkel? I saw a sea turtle yesterday and thought about that." Carol and I discussed how to respond. We agreed to acknowledge the memory warmly, without pretending the conflict hadn't happened. "We do remember that trip fondly. The sea turtle sighting was a highlight. We hope you're enjoying Thailand and are open to talking when you return if you'd like." Short, warm, but maintaining our boundaries. Small communications continued sporadically. A birthday text, a Christmas card. Each exchange carefully neutral, testing the waters. We learned through family that Jason's parents had indeed covered the emergency wedding costs, but had subsequently reduced their financial support, expecting the young couple to show more responsibility. Nearly a year after the wedding disaster, Amanda suggested meeting for coffee at a neutral location. She arrived alone, explaining that Jason was too busy with work to attend. The conversation was stilted at first, focusing on safe topics like her job and our recent home renovations. Halfway through our meeting, she revealed the real reason for her outreach. Jason's parents haven't been as supportive as they promised. They paid for the wedding emergency, but then said we needed to learn to live within our means before they would help with a house down payment. I nodded unsurprised. That must be difficult. Since you had saved for my wedding and then didn't use all the money. She trailed off, unable to directly ask for financial help. Amanda, I said gently, we're happy to rebuild our relationship with you, but it can't be transactional. We're not a funding source. She looked down at her coffee. I wasn't trying to. I think you were, Carol interjected kindly. And that's been the pattern. We love you, but we won't participate in that dynamic anymore. Amanda left shortly after, clearly disappointed. But something had shifted. She had sought us out, even if for incomplete reasons. The one-year anniversary of the wedding brought another invitation dinner at our home. Amanda arrived without Jason, who was working late again. Over my pot roast, her childhood favorite, she finally broached the painful topic. I've been looking at old photos, she said quietly, from when I was growing up. Carol nodded encouragingly. You guys gave me everything, Amanda continued, tears forming. And I treated you terribly. I don't even recognize who I was last year. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. As the evening progressed, she revealed more about her marriage. Jason's controlling behavior, his parents' conditional support, her growing disillusionment with the social circle she had so desperately wanted to join. They're all so empty, she admitted. All they talk about is status and appearances. No one actually cares about each other. 2 months later, Amanda called in tears. She had discovered Jason was having an affair with his administrative assistant. She needed a place to stay while figuring out her next steps. We welcomed her home without hesitation or recriminations. During those weeks, our relationship began healing in earnest. Amanda apologized fully for her behavior surrounding the wedding. I got caught up in a world that seemed glamorous, but was actually toxic. I wanted so badly to belong that I was willing to sacrifice the people who truly loved me. As Amanda rebuilt her life, eventually filing for divorce from Jason, our family found a new equilibrium. She took a job at a local marketing firm, declining the higher-paying position that would have kept her in Jason's social orbit. She started dating Michael, a kind architect, who treated her and us with genuine respect. Looking back now, 2 years after that painful wedding day, I recognize that our willingness to enforce boundaries was actually the most loving thing we could have done. By refusing to financially enable behavior that harmed our family bonds, we created space for authentic relationship to eventually return. I've learned that sometimes love requires the courage to allow natural consequences. When we protect people from the results of their choices, we rob them of the opportunity to grow. Amanda is happier now than she ever was chasing status through Jason's world. Our relationship is stronger because it's built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. If you've ever faced the heartbreaking choice between enabling a loved one and standing firm on your own self-respect, I hope our story helps you find the courage to choose dignity. Have you had to make a difficult decision with family that ultimately led to healing? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more reflections on family forgiveness and finding the strength to love with healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most genuine connections.